So, to answer your question, I have to tell you a little bit about who I am. I'm a first generation American. My parents came from India like more than 50 years ago. And they left India to come to America for financial pursuit.
I think finances have shaped the journey of not only me, but also my entire family. We are migrants to this country, which means that for us to survive, we needed access to finances and be financially successful.
I remember when I was a student here at ETHS, being very eager to work, being very eager to find a job, being very eager to have my own source of income.
It was always a struggle trying to figure out as a kid, through a kid's eyes, like why do they get this thing or why do they get to do that and we don't? And I think I learned to do a lot of copycatting. I think I learned to try to do things that other kids were doing or try to have things that other kids were having.
So the drive to do good in school and be focused on having a job and then having access to money to support our family has been the root of all of my family goals.
At that time, it wasn't so much to build wealth or to be financially successful. I didn't have a long-term vision in mind. It was basically just to be able to have fun on the weekend, be able to, afford the tickets to the movie.
But enjoying life and making sure I had time for my family, and then once I had my own children, spending time with them and not being consumed with working just to earn the money, but working to be able to enjoy and love those around me.
So in India, a homogenous society, it's class-based, right? And I'm sure you've heard of the caste system, where there are levels of people, right? Wealth levels of people, and it's kind of socially reproduced with the access to education.
In America, people often consider success with money, right? But how can you determine that as success, right?
In the American context, I think wealth and material substances are hand in hand. I think in order for you to be perceived wealthy and to be deemed wealthy, you need to have things.
All too often, society uses people and values things.
Is I think sometimes people have made the accumulation of wealth, the acquisitions, the materialism, if you will, their goal and how they determine their own personal success in life. Those things can be good indicators. They can certainly influence, how we live our lives. But if that's all it's about, that's awfully shallow.
Yeah. So America is a capitalist society. You're on Facebook, you're scrolling, these ads pop up and you're like, wow, I need that. It's also very much the way in which we socialize ourselves into feeling worthy.
I think that is what people perceive poverty as a lack of things in general, but I'm thinking more abstractly, lack of healthcare is a sign of poverty, lack of shelter, lack of safety. So the material substance seems like an additive layer of like they have all of these things, all these cars, all this jewelry, this bling, and that means you are wealthy.
You're trying to, I suppose, seek to have enough. But when you think of it that way, the question becomes, when is enough enough?
Right. America's done a really good job of making folks feel as though they need things to be worthy.
But it's about perception, not reality. And a lot of that has to do with how things are portrayed, right? And we see inherent whiteness and white supremacy culture characteristics that show up in social media, that show up in the news, that show up in TV, that show up in video and in movies. And that shapes how we think that reality is when it is.
What our country's all about. Our economy is based on it. Our whole advertising world is based on it. Everybody gets on their devices and they're sent through algorithms a million ads telling them to buy.
We all have dreams, whether you have money or not, you still have dreams. And most times to acquire those dreams, you need money.
We have these symbols of like status, right? From watches to cars to homes to communities that we want to live in that pretty much are the stamp of approval. It's like what we work for our whole lives, right?
This is the land of opportunity, but it's also very complex with who gets those opportunities.
If you want to go to Whole Paycheck, which I affectionately use to refer to Whole Foods, and you can access some very healthy produce and foods, it's not accessible to everyone. And so that's part of what comes up when we think about balance and financial success and environmental impact. It's also about access.
Message that we get as Americans is you're never good enough. The only way to come close is to buy something and to consume and to be seen consuming and to always be getting the new thing, the iPhone 15 or whatever the new thing is. And I think that's just a shame, you know, and it benefits the few, and the people who get the new things rarely feel good about themselves.
I think that the societal perceptions can actually get in the way for a lot of people. Because so often the societal perceptions are, oh, look at that great car that person drives. Wow, they've been able to afford that house. I heard that they got a boat. You know, I was in their house and they had a flat screen TV that covered an entire wall. The problem with those societal perceptions is that somehow that is the measure of a person's worth. That somehow that's the measure of a person's life.
I just think that this country has some soul searching to do, as it always does, around what its real values are. Is it, you know, really much, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and for whom?
People all too often try to display wealth so as to be viewed as successful by society, and so they'll get themselves in debt, spend on things they don't need because they're trying to project this image of success because they want society's approval.
And I think that goes back to how America perceives wealth. If you are not being perceived as wealthy, the question is, are you even wealthy? I think all of it comes back to yes, if you are not taking up space and showing off financial success, then the American system doesn't deem you as the higher ups.
I think the biggest issue in our world, and I was just like watching this TikTok, right, about the just moral theory, I think that's what it's called, where people believe, and it's like ingrained in us from a young age, that people who do good things happen, and people who do bad things happen. This idea of morality as the indicator for success. And I think a lot of people buy into that.
But there's a societal perception that if you, essentially it's almost like a drug and you're chasing the dragon. So you need to earn the most possible because then I'll be happy because I'll have all these things in my life. And now with social media, it looks like you've got these things in your life with all your loved ones, but in reality, you may not spend time with them.
I think we have to be careful of what you take in with your eyes online, because you may think somebody's like so rich and wealthy and glamorous and all of that, and they may be renting everything that they have on that post.
And that plays out two ways. It can either drive you to work harder for a version of success that you might not even be sure is yours, or it can deflate you completely from wanting to achieve success, because it seems like there's just so many avenues of it that it seems hard to figure out which one is yours.
I think a lot of people would say these are the things that push people to work really hard. Because you kind of have to be rich if you want to have healthcare, be able to go to school, have a safe, comfortable place to live, be able to eat healthy food. If we did the math for all those things, that's that income that you need to be at for those things, that's a wealthy person in America. So I think it fuels sort of like dangling that in front of us, that you can get these things that you really have the right to as a human, but you gotta work hard for it. You gotta be wealthy for it. It fuels a culture of competition.
we really believe folks are successful because they've worked hard and not because the systems that have been creative have allowed them to flourish. I was positioned to get my doctorate. My parents had enough wealth to ensure that I would take that track in life. I didn't have to worry about finances. It's not just a coincidence I did it, I was positioned. And to not acknowledge that privilege is to say that I worked as hard as someone who didn't have the financial backing to do that. And that's not the same. And so I think we mystify success, right, through these ideas that are just inherently wrong. Some people have it easier, and it's not the same path.
People are just dealt a different hand than others, and unfortunately they're not always treated as fairly as others. And a lot of that, some of that is in my view, is put on the government, but a lot of it is put on just all of us as a society.
It requires you to stray away from individualism and actually care for others more than yourself, to compromise and sacrifice your own ease to do better for others. That's very hard for American society. We are a culture of individualism, individual pursuit of happiness, right? And we have to undo that because most other cultures are more collective and America is not. So building like, the only way we're gonna get there is to build concepts of community, to actually, in solidarity, do what's best for all, because we are all going to suffer. All of our children will suffer. But a culture of individualism reinforces the idea of the present only, not the future. What's happening now is what matters, and that's problematic. So we have to have a cultural change to actually do this with integrity.
We live in a world where success is often defined in financial terms and material terms. Nice fancy car, big house, and a nice neighborhood, and that's viewed as success. But we've seen enough cases where people they're hollow on the inside, or they're still searching for something because spirituality is missing.
I used to put a lot of value on materialism because when I was younger growing up, that was how people showed value. People didn't really have conversations, financial conversations just conversations in depth about finance and what money is and what credit is and how you can use these things as tools to elevate your life. I just saw it from the perspective of whatever you had on was the representation of your wealth.
America likes to cast itself as a classless society where anyone, regardless of their background, has the same opportunity to succeed. That's obviously not true. We have a clear caste system in this country. That doesn't mean you can't, have some financial success, but the barriers are extreme.
Things are valued, and people are used to acquire those things that are valued. And a good example of that, in my view, is slavery. People were used to acquire the material things, material wealth that was valued.
Because we live in a very things-driven world, right? We like the touch of things, the smell of things, the taste of things, and we want to be comfortable, and that comfortable brings about a certain aspect of, luxury, and then that has a certain status attached to it. And if we're honest, poverty is often stigmatizing.
It causes people to think that they need to have all of this in order to be financially successful, and might make them feel like they don't have enough when they do have enough.
Especially being a teenager, I thought, the more that I represented and the more that I could show I had wealth, then that would actually give, the value that came with it, even if I didn't have the actual means.
The whole country is based on debt, so everybody has it. There are credit cards galore. There are myriad ways that you can fall into debt, and we are bombarded with advertisements that in order to feel good about ourselves, we need to buy, and a lot of people don't have the resources to do that, so you have to go in debt to do that. You're paying it off the rest of your life. If you die, that debt doesn't go away. It gets passed on to your children.
I don't believe we do a good job teaching students, children, young people, young adults about financial literacy. I think America is probably the most ignorant and careless in the way we allow and normalize debt and concepts of debt.
Very recently, well, probably in the last 15 years or so, companies have gotten really good at not just selling you a product, but selling you a lifestyle. And selling you all the things that encompass a certain lifestyle. So it's not just enough to have this product. Now you have to have this product, but it comes with this car, which comes with this watch, which comes with this house, which comes with this. And so I wonder nowadays if people are able to decipher for themselves if this is something that I want because I want it, or is this something that I want because it ties into a lifestyle that I'm pursuing.
You realize that that is all smoke and mirrors, and it really becomes more of a burden than a gift in your life.
A lot of people seem to be aware of the idea of materialism, consumerism, financial success, and what it means to be financially successful. Yet, even though they're aware of it, for some reason, they can't seem to get out of it. They can't seem to set themselves free from it.
I think when we consider being ambitious and what does that mean, it must be, for that positive correlation, attributed to hopes and dreams and bigger pursuits and passions, as opposed to being correlated to money.
What are we willing to sacrifice to have these things so that we can be whatever? Beautiful, successful, cool, whatever. When you pass away, you don't take any of that stuff with you. You don't take the money. You don't, none of that goes with you, right? It's all left behind. So be careful where you allow your ambitions, especially your financial ambitions, to drive you.